The Pod Barber. Coming up on today's show.
You will die. This will kill you. And this is very important to understand. As much as there was fun, good times, they're outweighed by the bad times tenfold, right? 100-fold. Every addict that I've ever met, they all start off smoking or drinking, then it's weed, then it's cocaine and ecstasy, then it's sometimes crack, and then it's, well, I'm too wide on crack, I need heroin to come down, and then all of a sudden it's crack and heroin together. And once you're there, mate, most people never come back from that. Never.
You're listening to The Pod Barber. I'm championing the chat, proving conversation is the cure to better mental health and well-being. Meet my guests from all walks of life showing vulnerability and sharing wisdom. Sit in on my chats and be part of reality entertainment. Join the Pod Barber tribe. Subscribe, share and like people. Feel the sonic positivity we're pumping right at you. You, my friends, are not alone. Who's next, please? Well, I'll tell you who. We welcome Amateur Strongman Will Clarke into the studio today. Will works within the construction industry as a freelance commercial manager and partners that up with his online fitness programming aimed at busy dads. Having found his niche with his love of strongman, Team Sustainable Fitness was born, but before all that lies a past which resulted in a 3-month stint living inside a rehab centre following years of drug use, ultimately separating him from his newborn son and young family. Rediscovering himself in rehab, Will battled the many demons and now looks to use his deep understanding of addiction in a positive way. Ultimately led by visions of a new prosperous landscape, now on a happier journey, Will discovered his love for fitness, philosophy, psychology and self-improvement as part of his prescription. But not just to the betterment of himself, his family, is the community that he and his business partner are passionate about growing, who feed and grow healthy habits to become the best of themselves. Will? Pleased to have you here today, man.
Thanks, mate. That made my heart race big time listening to that. Thanks, mate.
I've summed it. And for this season, we're still doing noodles, so you're one of the last to get one. We're going to run them dry soon. But here's your one, man. Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree. I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Sustainable Fitness provides programs that work, no cheating, no hacks. So let's say Will Clarke's glass is now half filled. Empty the destruction of addiction, the old glass spilled. Drink and drugs, the stress enveloped in pain and shame. Truth is the man sharing the mirror is the only man to blame. A friendship, some guidance, adapting philosophy, reframing a positive mindset. Changes in behaviours strengthen a man's recovery, replacing doubts and regret. Neuroplasticity rewires the body to the brain. Adopting the ancient Stoic meditations is one way to train. Inner strength grows confidence, comes from deep inside this dad bod. Now the time's to listen to his story here on the Pod Barbers Pod.
You're quite slick at those, Mick. Yeah, I've listened to a few. It's good, mate. Thank you. That's really nice.
That's all right, man. We had a great conversation on the phone halfway through a day. I was cutting hair and I buzzed you up on social media. We may as well drop in there as a little starter because I know you've gone a little bit quiet.
Yes.
You're having a bit of a break from it. Why is that, man?
It's quite layered and quite deep, really, if I'm honest. I'm an addict, first and foremost, which has to be acknowledged really at every point that I cross any bridge. And I think to sum it up quite neatly, it's like if I see myself displaying addictive tendencies in anything, I have to rein it in, and sometimes that means to abstain entirely from things. And I think, put it this way, compulsive checking of my phone is not good for me. The mechanisms in which addiction work in the brain are complex, but they are all very similar. It doesn't matter what you're doing. So whether it be exercise, I'm addicted to exercise, but I'm kind of okay with that. It doesn't really bring out the worst in me. It probably brings out the best. But then when you're at home and you're compulsively checking your phone, and that's what I have to be careful of. And I find myself doing that with social media to a degree. And also it's like, I always ask why. Why am I doing something? Self-awareness has been my biggest companion in this whole sort of last 3 years of being in recovery. And it's like, I have to ask myself, why am I doing something? And it's like, okay, why am I on social media? Now, there are pure intentions and there are good reasons, but then there are also the reasons that I'm not that comfortable with, i.e. validation and all this sort of stuff. And that really feeds the side of me that I'm not that comfortable with. So I just have to keep it on a leash, put it that way. And if it runs away or I start to feel negative or shameful about it, then it goes. It doesn't matter what business is doing, doesn't matter what it's going to affect. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter who's following it and who's getting something from it. I have to come first, otherwise I can't continue to do what I'm doing and on the path I'm on. And everyone portrays on social media the good bits. This is my bad bit, and therefore I'm not on it at the moment. But that includes WhatsApp, that includes anything that I feel is making me compulsively pick up my phone.
A lot of people in lesser a journey than you are with recovery would probably instantaneously pick up on that and go, do you know what, I do that? If they're willing to be honest with themselves, like even hearing someone else admitting to that and then rebooting how you then approach what you're going to do about it. And you're quite simply, your awareness is there and you're saying, do you know what, put it down. I'm not getting any benefit from it right now.
I think my thing is always, certainly since I left rehab, it's like, I'm not going to give loads of people advice. Like if someone asks for my advice, I'll give my opinion, but I try and give advice through the medium of just sharing my experience and also being honest. Yeah, it's a big thing for me. And when I start being less honest, I start to waver. Sometimes we get caught on the hamster wheel of this digital life, and I think I am a lot happier without it. Now, I'm going to be back on it eventually because it's necessary for me to share my message, I feel, and also to promote the business that we're trying to grow to help people. But again, those are the pure intentions. Yeah, it's just if I can hang on to them and feel comfortable with them, great. The minute it starts to come into the other side, it goes again.
I think with social media, you've got the awareness, you're doing something about it. It's a simple decision, isn't it? I'm just going to test myself here. I'm going to,
and that's it.
I'm going to have a bit of sobriety from that.
And the big thing for me, Mick, and you said it there, test, right? So I do like to test myself. If something is encroaching on my well-being, it's like, can you remove that and still be all right? Yeah. It's difficult because it's become such a part of our lives. You wouldn't be able to reach the people you're reaching without the internet and podcasts and it's pressure to perform. It's pressure to produce good stuff, and you'll probably understand that with this because this is fantastically put together. It's like,
thank you.
To remain with that standard is difficult. I mean, you've got Harry out there. He's a legend on the mix deck. Yeah. He's probably smiling.
It's all Harry.
But like he's experienced. He's been through the mill. He understands. But it's like when you're early on in creating, and there's a lot goes on, mate.
So let's get to know Will Clarke as the young lad. Tell me a bit about your background, early home life.
So, adored my dad, still do. He moved out when I was 5. I mean, there's not much context before that. I remember mum and dad round a little bit, but it was nothing that I believe like scarred me. But so dad moved out when I was about 5. My younger brother Joe is 2 years younger than me, and Jake was very young. I was hypersensitive and I was a very sensitive kid, and it's like that obviously affected me massively, and I didn't understand. No kid would understand, but I carried that. And then what sort of happened over the next few years was I was difficult at school. I used to if it all got too much at school, I would literally leave the room and run home and just knock on the door, mum, sort of like very dependent on my mum. And I think I was naughty, but I felt like everyone was out to get me. That's what I can remember. So sort of leading up to secondary school, I used to suck my fingers through the whole of my childhood, and that was probably a comfort thing. And funny enough, it's probably the first sort of addiction that I kicked. And I remember I was going to senior school, and it was like, mum was like, look, it's okay, but if you do that in the school, you're going to get a hard time, mate. And I was like, okay. So I just wore a glove for one night. It was done. It was gone. So that's the first time I had to leave something behind that I was dependent on. So, I mean, going into secondary school, I couldn't engage in the process of school. I didn't understand what it was. And I was quite bright. As my life panned out, it showed me that I've got quite a good brain. So 13 years old, I was already messing around with drink. I was smoking weed. That was what interested me, the instant gratification, the buzz, all that sort of stuff. That was the path I was on.
You were young, but one of the older lads, bit cool, bit on the outside, bit of a bad boy.
Do you know what? Maybe I was. But again, didn't perceive myself in that way.
Didn't even realise it.
Drifted towards the people that I felt comfortable with. But again, felt like I was being ridiculed, felt like I was being bullied and all this sort of stuff. But probably wouldn't have articulated that at school, but that's how I felt coming away from it. And drugs and drink were kind of a way of like, I could do that. And then as I found out as I got older, I was pretty good at doing it. And I was comfortable in that space. And obviously when you're intoxicated, you become more confident. And I think it gave me the ability to be myself. That's how I feel about it. And that carried on for the subsequent 20 years, I suppose.
The access to drugs, particularly these days, it is a pandemic problem. Youngsters on drugs. Did you recognise the moments afterwards that you were being affected in your moods? Did you have that awareness at all?
I think from an early age with the cannabis, it was like I would feel really groggy the next day, and then I started to associate that with that, and I did kind of have half an idea how these things were affecting me, but I just didn't care.
Yeah,
I was just like, that's what happens when you do that.
Yeah, when was the general awareness, at school? Was it still a stigma for them to talk about it, or were they trying to be open?
No, there was no awareness. My form teacher, this did stick with me. She said to me, this was the drug education you got. When you take drugs, you're lifted up to, and I'm holding my hand on here, lifted up to this level. But when you don't take them, you're lower than when you started. And that stuck with me. And I thought, and I kind of related back to that a lot over the years, because it was like, yeah, she's right. That is what happens. And what I later learned was, one, that she was correct, and two, that those years in your life are key for brain development, right? So if you mess around with substances in those years over any other time in your life, you're wiring the brain to use that as a coping mechanism. Again, didn't understand that at the time, but it is for me, Mick. Now it's a life sentence. My behaviour when I was young is a life sentence, because my default reaction, if there's an issue, consume. Yeah, whether that be a coffee or whether that be pick up your phone. That's my default. And I've not said it in that way before, but it's a life sentence, because I don't believe that I'll ever lose that initial reaction to a stress. I mean, I do it with food. It's like, I'm stressed and I get hungry. I resist a lot better than I used to, because I understand it a bit now. But like times when I'm not hungry and I'll just want to eat because I'm stressed, and let's go out for a nice meal, or let's go down the shop. I need to get some new trainers. I don't need any trainers. I've got 20 pairs. But it's like that hit of dopamine. And then that's the key.
Yeah, the key word. Yeah. I think you are in a life sentence. I feel like I probably have similar tendencies as well. And now I suppose the key with addiction is learning to bring in healthy, beneficial addictions, but managed. we've
got craving minds. Our minds crave stimulation, and they crave dopamine. I heard of a study with a rat, and they engineered this rat to not produce dopamine at all, which is the key driver for addiction and repetitive behaviour, right? This rat was fed by a syringe, eat, fine. Put the food a body length away from it, it died, starved to death, because dopamine is what makes you get up and go. So anyone that says they're not addicted in some form, like, they don't obviously understand the mechanism behind it. Addiction has a stigma, the word. It's like me sitting in a room and saying I'm an addict. Even now, it's hard, because people look at addicts and they think heroin addict, or someone on the street who's a down and out. But I've sat in a room with these people, and they're people. They're good people. And unfortunately, they pushed it too far. But then you look at the other end of the spectrum, the CEO of the large corporation, how do they get there? You know, what drives them? The same thing that drives the heroin addict, that need to get the payoff. Yeah. And for heroin addicts, it's the substance. And for the CEO, it's the power, it's the verification from others. And I believe they work in the same ways. And I think there's probably some science behind it as well.
Drinking and drug use at that sort of young age, did it become like escapism at any point?
Yeah. I mean, that's all it is. That's all it is. It's not the problem. It's the cure, mate. You know, the problem was me, and it continues to be me. I am my own problem, and we all are our own problems. But it's like, how do you deal with that? How do you give yourself a hug? And for me, it was to get off my face. That was how I did it, you know, and that made me feel okay. So yeah, escapism, taking yourself away from the pain that you feel just day to day. And when I say pain, I mean, it could be fear, it could be embarrassment, it could be anxiety, it could be anything that doesn't feel good. For me, is pain. And if you sometimes just sitting there, and I still do it now, I sit there and I'm just like, I'm not relaxed. And for me, that's pain. And if I'm not relaxed, then I know, I've always got this in my head, if I went and had a drink or used drugs, it might not make me feel better in the long run, but it will right then. And it will certainly give me something else to think about, because you're focusing on the thing you're doing.
Got a quick fix. Trying to find something else. You're sat here now. What was the next step from higher education, like work-wise? Where did you go?
So I joined my long-term employer at the age of 16 as an apprentice electrician, and I was useless for 3 years. And then I started to sniff. The money was starting to get a bit better, and obviously I knew that if I passed my driving test at 19, then I would get a van, and then I'd have some independence, and that kind of stimulated me to a degree. Again, like the professional side of things can stimulate you. And then, got in a van and kind of got focused for a few years. And there's loads of points like that where I got focused for a while. There was a consistent theme from really joining that company to my late 20s when I finally got treatment. But it was like this sort of sort yourself out, flop, sort yourself out, flop, over and over again. Probably like sustained periods of using, small periods of abstinence or attempting at it, or just drinking, not using other substances. I mean, there's ecstasy. Yeah. I mean, it's not really something I wouldn't say I was ever addicted to ecstasy, because it's not, in my opinion, a very addictive substance. I mean, you wouldn't want, it's like once you've taken it, you're in it for the long haul. It's like jumping off the cliff. So you're less inclined to do that. But some of the most pleasurable moments in my life have been spent using substances. Yeah. So look, it's not all doom.
Even to this day, you can still sit there because you've been in amazing places with great people, and it's not been dark and horrible like it can get to, where it does get to.
Well, it will, and they sum it up perfectly in the treatment centre I was at, and it's like, you will die. This will kill you. And this is very important to understand. As much as there was fun and there was good times, they're outweighed by the bad times tenfold, right, 100-fold. Every addict that I've ever met started off the same as me, doing the same things. They all start off smoking or drinking, then it's weed, then it's cocaine and ecstasy, then it's sometimes crack, and then it's, well, I'm too wide on crack, I need heroin to come down, and then all of a sudden it's crack and heroin together. And once you're there, mate, most people never come back from that. Yeah. Never.
It's not just a mental addiction, it's a physical addiction.
Well, when it gets to that point, it is entirely physical as well. Yeah. And it's important for anyone that does kind of have a judgment over addicts, like, just understand that, they made a decision in the first place to do that. The reason behind that are theirs to own. But it's like, once they've taken that leap into certainly heroin, you can't just stop. It makes them sick. Yeah, but you can imagine the Joe Bloggs in a flat who's a heroin addict that can't get his fix. I mean, that's life-threatening. That's important to understand, because I think there's a lot of judgment around, like, these people sitting on the street
they're just people. They don't want to be there. Their story, like you said before, you picked up on the best point is they're human, and their story of how they're getting there. Most people don't tip up with an ambition of being on the streets at ends with their own mental health, with the only prescription for themselves is a blip in the day where they're so intoxicated that they can't feel. And
it's a physical and mental painkiller, mate. That's what opioids are.
If we think about your particular story and your addiction, and we reverse all the way back, we see the early signs with the finger sucking.
I believe so, yeah.
I know I do as well, because, like, working as I work, as a barber, I see lots of twitches, itches, fidgets, different behavioural problems, and you can kind of see it as you get older. And I suppose I'm always searching and trying to sort of dig around and thinking, well, how can we better prepare these guys? And sort of, not that I'm a oracle and I can see into the future, but you can sort of tell.
In terms of youngsters?
Yeah, I want to pre-cover them and give them
100%.
Like the awareness. And it's about how can Will Clarke's story eventually become something of use to those children? Well, they're unlikely to listen to it, so we have to tap into the parents. The older brothers and sisters.
Certainly. And I think the one thing I would say is that we need to open the minds up and understand that when you're in a problem, communication is number one, right? Because I know that if I communicated with my mum, but my mum loved me so much, she was very protective and probably shielded me a bit from stuff that I maybe needed to be exposed to, right? So it's like, it's communicating with the child. It's all in communication.
Conversation is the cure.
Conversation is the cure. And I think for me, like, it has been, I haven't done anything. I've spoken to lots of people.
Talking therapy.
Yeah, like CBT is talking, changing the way you perceive the world and the way you perceive other people. And it's like, in terms of educating kids, like, maybe the parents need to take an interest in it.
In educating themselves.
Yeah, first. And
then if we can get to that point where there's more awareness, it doesn't feel like, it's just the scientists, it's just the therapists, it's just the counsellors, it's just the trained people. It's sort of almost putting them in a separate area of the world. It's like, no, they're there creating good content via social media, giving amazing podcasts, with educational tips, tricks, ways around it. The nuance of how do we better ourselves and gain that awareness. And it's completely changing all the time, because all the data that's being collected and funneled in, that's a moving thing. It's like you pulled up with the mice scenario or the and the rats. There's loads of studies now that were taking place in the 50s, 60s that we can now look at now. They're so relevant now. It's timeless because it shows you in a sped up program, because it's a short.
Well, we've watched it play out, haven't we?
It's an evolution.
Yeah.
We're, Charles Darwin. We're in an evolution where I think society and humanity really needs to rebalance itself and reframe what it is we're expecting and doing.
And I think, Mick, that's where I struggle. I don't want to give myself over to this new way, maybe entirely.
What, like anxious kind of thing?
Yeah, like, I don't know, anxiety's bandied around a lot, and I wouldn't say I suffer with anxiety anymore, but I definitely get feelings of unrest. And we all get nervous and fearful. I'm driving here this morning, like I've got butterflies in my stomach because I'm going to a place I don't know. I'm going to sit with some people I've not met before, although we've spoken on the phone. I knew I'd be safe here, but it's like, I can admit that, but I'm not suffering with anxiety. I've got butterflies in my stomach. Yeah,
that's good. That's normal.
Where I'm at now, I try to display resilience. I'm trying to do things that I find hard in order to, one, better myself and set an example for my kids and my wife and the wider family and friend group. I am comfortable in that position. I want to lead. I want to do the thing that's hard, because I get joy when someone else uses something that I've done and goes and does it themselves. Look, there's a payoff there for me. That validates me a little bit. But again, anything in life, if you go into it with pure intentions, you can't go wrong. Because the only time that's going to go wrong is if the cards didn't fall the way they were supposed to.
That's a powerful sentence to wake up to, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Just go into it with a good intention, something pure.
When I say pure intentions, I mean, are you going into it to get something out of it yourself, or are you going into it to give to the situation? And then the payoff comes anyway.
Yeah, are you being part of a team?
Exactly. And let's call a team like you and Howie. It's like you're going into this and you two are creating something that you can give away, which you are, because you feel it's important. And like I said earlier, if it comes back round the other way, great. But go into it with the pure intention.
Yeah, I don't think people should start to doubt the success, because the way that everything's structured, that if you do something, from, using this as an example, we create a series of conversations to highlight other people's stories, to hopefully encourage those who are not as far in their journey to be able to be brought forward, to see hope, to see a different direction, and reduce the cost on society in so many different ways, but for the betterment of the individual. But then that ripple effect that that the people nearest them are going to benefit, that in itself is the most wholesome thing. That's what I get a pleasure from.
Great.
I do think universally there is that cosmic energy. You get out what you put in. And a lot of people, we might well have been trained on the sense of investment. Oh, right. Yeah, well, I've invested a load of money in this and, I want a certain payout. I want 10%, per annum for 3 years. But actually, there's a lot of long-term stuff that we need to be prepared to put in. Health, well-being, your community, your household, yourself. You got to pay the man every day.
Hey there, it's Howie. Just interrupting really briefly, I've got a quick favour to ask. We don't run ads on the Pod Barber, but if you're finding this podcast helpful, or if you know someone who might benefit from listening to it, please take just 10 seconds to share this episode by tapping on those 3 little dots on your podcast player. From there, you can text or email a link to the show and spread the word of what we're trying to do here. That'd be great. Mick and I really appreciate your help. Okay, back to the show.
What point was it that Rehab was presented to you? Was it something?
You can ask this question.
Well, I'm just asking.
I think it's the obvious question.
Well, no, it's just the way I want to. It's about, was it yourself? Who was it that pushed you into that?
So I'll explain the last day that I wasn't in recovery. So I played football in the morning, went to the pub. Baby's there, wife's there, everyone's there, just met for a beer after the football. Wife and kids go home. I go off on my travels to find cocaine, essentially. It starts there. We had people over in the afternoon. I was using all through that and drinking a lot, lots of bottles of wine and beers and stuff. Everyone's gone to bed now. I'm acting shifty, out on my own in the garden, as always. And I've run out, need more. So jump in the car, drive to Hertford, which is a 25-minute drive, and get some more. drive home, continue to do it. And I think this was the point when I got back home and I was doing it on the sofa in the dark, listening for someone to come down, essentially paranoid as anything. And I just thought to myself, I've had enough. And it was like, I need to go to rehab. And it was almost like that idea was presented to me, but I mean, it was in my head. I immediately texted my mum and said those words, I need to go to rehab, I need your help. I took the dog out for a walk in the morning as Kelly and the kids were getting up because I was not to be seen. So I just took the dog out and just walked up the road and texted Kelly and told her what I'd been doing for a long time without telling her. Bearing in mind, Ronnie's a month old at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Came back. Now, what my mum and Kelly had done is found rehabs. They found this one in Hemel Hempstead, which they said they could get me in on the Tuesday. So this is the Monday. And I said, well, so what's the crack? And they're like, well, you're going to go there, they're going to take your phone off you, and you're going to get up there and you're going to stay there for 3 months. And it's going to cost 12 grand.
Wow.
I was just so scared. Kelly stood there and said to me, this is the time to do this. And if you don't do it now, you'll never do it. It was hard, man. I was scared. I was really scared. I didn't go into situations that I wasn't comfortable in. And then I was going into a house with a load of people I didn't know. We're all sitting there and no one wants to be there. But we had to engage and we had to heal each other and it worked.
Is this like a normal house or is this a sort of a stately home with grounds? Are you away from the rest of society as well?
It's like a hostel, not glamorous. It was clean and tidy, but it wasn't nice, which I think I needed. And lots of rooms and some communal areas.
Were you fed, everything prepared for you?
It might be easier if I tell you a standard day in there, right?
Yeah, that would be great, yeah.
So it's all timetabled out. You get up in the morning. The first thing you do is go down and do your job, which you've got assigned to you for the week. So that might be mop the floors or clean the ovens or whatever. So that's the work element. And then it's breakfast. Just help yourself to breakfast. And then you'll have like a couple of classes, almost like a school timetable. So you'll have like relapse prevention is a class and you'll have painting or something mindful. And then you go on to lunchtime. That is quite communal. You'll have 2 people assigned to cook lunch and dinner every day and it will change all the time. And that was really enjoyable. After lunch, another couple of classes till 3 o'clock and then it's like dead time till dinner. And that's where the growth happens, man. I mean, I was so exhausted some days because there's just so much going on. I'd just have to go and sleep for an hour, which they don't really encourage you to do during the day because they want you to sit and digest what's happened because that's part of the process of the CBT, the therapy. Go and have a sleep and then it's dinner time. Same again, 2 people cook and then it's like they'll do, you might do a quiz or something on a Friday night or it's very like old school, going back to like how your nan would just live.
Yeah, like the entertainment that was on
Yeah.
offer. No computer games, no losing yourself.
Nothing.
So trying to really unstimulate you but get you connected to those around you. And obviously the lessons through the day, you're taking bite-sized bits but really draining. But that's all feeding the information, so replacing your old stuff with these
You're just reconditioning your outlook, mindset, what you hold is important. I mean, that period was first 2 weeks, no contact. Up to week 6, you can have 2 phone calls a week. So then I got to start speaking to Kelly again. After week 6, you can go out with your phone.
So that separation from society, I mean, I want to tap further into the, you've got a 4-month-old or 4-week-old son. Your missus, honestly,
woman,
man, yeah, what a great woman. But also that level of responsibility, those dark moments, man, they must have been
I cried
so
a lot.
dark.
I cried a lot, Mick. I sat there crying a lot. That's the self-pity and I wasn't comfortable. That was not what you do. You do not leave your kid. But ultimately, I had to go then because if it didn't go then, he would have maybe been 3 or 4 and then it would have affected him. This ties in. The situation with my dad, until that point, I was very resentful and very unhappy that he had left the family home. And I gave him a hard time for it quite a few times, and we came to blows a few times. But what I realised in that moment is that at 30 or 29 or 30 years old, which was the same age he was when he left my mum, I was in a rehab, leaving my son, who was a month old. And that really helped me to be okay with my dad. He hasn't changed much because I think he was trying to tell me that, but I was like, no, you left my mum. But that was really, you bring up the point about Ronnie, that happened. It fixed the relationship with my dad, gave me acceptance around that. And if I didn't do it then Ronnie may have been 5, and then he might have been in the same scenario as I was, being resentful, until he went to rehab when he was 30. And he had 3 kids. Yeah, and he didn't have a drug problem. So it wasn't like he was escaping in that way. He was doing the best he could with what he had. You build up this idealism of like what a couple should be or what a family unit should be. And unfortunately, not everyone's is like that. And no one should feel bad that their parent has left them, because it's not about the kid. It's about the relationship with the other person. Or sometimes not even that. It's about the person's relationship with themselves, which then makes them seek out that behaviour. And yeah, loaded as anything, that whole period. But it was like lights are on.
Now, the whole period of rehab, did there become a point where you were starting to see the amazement in you within that place? Tell us about that.
So the biggest thing is like starting to trust yourself. I'm a stickler for the rules, funny enough. Like, and being in there with that structure was like, okay, you've got loads of time, be organised, do as you're asked and stick to the programme and stick to the rules, and you're cool. It was very comfortable in the end. The fact I learned how to be on my own, and I learned how to not control everything, not be in control of everything. And I think that, I keep saying the word control, and it's like, that was it. I was always able to control everything I was doing and to some degree manipulate the people around me, that I didn't ever feel any pain. I was not exposed to it. So that was difficult, handing over the control to people that are looking after me and letting go of any conversation that anyone could be having about me outside was difficult.
Yeah. To even accept the fact that you've got that, that's part of therapy. That's part of reframing who you're going to be, is accepting what you are, telling the truth with no taboos. So when you resurfaced into the world, how was that?
Moment that sticks out to me most is when I went into work to have a conversation with them. They didn't encourage me to come back quickly, obviously. And I was a shell of the person I was before. I was very reserved, nervous as anything with people that I've known for 13, 14 years. I was exposed. I felt like...
Naked and vulnerable.
And that was a good space for me to be for a while, don't get me wrong. And that took a while to die off. But generally, I was relieved.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have to do the things I was doing anymore. I'd built up just enough tolerance and tools to not do, and I was so scared of it going back to that, so I just wasn't going to.
It's about you need to discover yourself, and I think it's about gaining the confidence to think, I can get myself into this crap. This is my life. I'm going to get myself out of it. Yeah. I am confident in doing that. You've got to build yourself some confidence.
But that first little bit is really difficult, isn't it? I'm no different to anyone else. I just didn't have the tools at the right time to get into the right place. That's how I look at it. It was like, do the cards fall in the right way for you? Were you exposed to things that made you resilient as a child? Did you have difficulties as a child but work through them instead of leaving them as open ends?
Yeah, well, and the thing is, we're also interconnected, and as a species, we're much more in touch with large parts of our brains, and it's confusing, but you can affect it by breathing techniques, you can affect it by meditations, you can affect it by exercise, you can affect it by getting a balance with your circadian rhythm at different times of the year. It's all on a spectrum, it's all... your story's your story, and it's okay. You're okay to have it because it's yours.
And people are shameful of this story, though. I don't know. I don't carry any shame about my experiences anymore because I've seen what my experiences have done for other people close to me, and also that lets you remove the shame and go, it was worth it. Whatever it looks like, there will be that will continue forever. I'm always on that self-improvement, and I want to get the best out of people, because if someone just grabbed me and got the best out of me when I was young, it would have really helped me early on. But like you say, it all leads to today, however
I think the shame game's there, and there's a lot of players in that game. There's a stadium full of them.
Yeah.
Honestly, man.
They're all there, mate.
It's like a party of hooliganism, and if you took each one separately and had a good chat with them, I bet you that they could all end up being vulnerable. I see it in the barber's chair.
I think we are not made in that way.
No.
But our experience will lead us to be not very nice people. It's all fear. If your fear is not providing for your family, then you're going to be a workaholic, and if your fear is public speaking, then you'll do everything not to do that.
Would you say you now microdose yourself on your particular fears to practice?
100%. I mean, I'm doing it right now, mate. If you put me in front of a microphone that doesn't feed back and a camera that doesn't feed back to me, I'm stifled. And this is probably a step towards being more comfortable in front of the camera. Because look, we do online coaching. Yeah, I've got to be able to be visible to these people in some capacity. So yeah, microdosing on fear or discomfort. Every morning I get up and I put the vest on, I go for a walk, and I don't want to do it. But the minute I start doing it, it's the delayed gratification starts to roll in, and it's worth it. So yes, certainly do some stuff that you don't want to do.
Through simple little things like put the weight vest on, I do a breathing technique every morning.
There you go. It's about...
It's whatever works,
Yeah.
but I tell you, man, that when you get that in, do you know what the only fear I have is what would I be like if I'd stopped exercising or if I stopped caring for my nutrition or my sleep habits or now my new reading habit where I'm filling myself with education, or if I was unable to go to work and speak one-to-one with people and be there for them.
Well, these are all the elements that make people happy. Because for me, like, I have to be proud of myself. I have to do things that make me think or remind me that I can be proud of myself. And I think that's validate yourself. Because if I look externally for validation, that is a rocky terrain that can be up there or on the floor. Yeah.
When you're doing that as well, though, but what you're also doing, because you're a parent, is you're also now teaching reasonably passively and subliminally.
Yeah.
If you want to do something for your family, practice what you would like to preach.
100%, I would totally agree. And for my own experience, and funny enough, the reason I met Brett was because I went to he owned a business called Strong Dad, which was based in Hartford, and it was basically a group of dads doing strongman stuff, hybrid strongman. And one of the lines on the web page, be better for your kids, and that was like, I need to do that. That was the driver. Be an example for your children. And now passively, we've got a gym in the garage. The kids have got a light weightlifting bar, and it's like Ronnie comes in and lifts up the 2.5 dumbbells. They see me going out walking, and it's that passive education.
You've then gone on and created Sustainable Strength. What is sustainable strength to you, and what's it's going to be to everyone else?
Essentially what it is, we want to share what we know works for us, Brett and I, and also help people adapt their situations to what they have. For instance, if you've got a kettlebell, Brett writes you a kettlebell program. There you go. You can do that 15 minutes every morning. Training, nutrition guidelines. We don't tell people what to eat. We just tell them where they should be at, there or thereabouts, and encourage people to track macros and understand food quite rigidly in the beginning with a view to a sustainable approach in the future, whether that's tracking or whether that's just gaining an understanding and being comfortable with their food intake. That's another thing. And then it's the mindset. And it's like, let's talk about body image. Why are you doing this? What are your drivers for wanting to change? Because I'll tell you now, when you get, I've been a lot leaner than I am now, but I tell you what, it didn't solve my problems. And I think a bit of context behind each point, and also like just, I'll sit on there and I'll share my experience. And we've got some fantastic fat loss results. We've got some fantastic mindset improvements. And we've got some people that have just gone away with a load more knowledge and happier in terms of what they're doing. So it's coaching. It may be lifestyle coaching. It may be fitness coaching. But essentially what we're trying to do is take people that are yearning for something and help them figure out what it is and help them achieve it and hopefully send them on their way. And Brett says, like, I want to talk you out of working with us. If we can resolve an issue in the first conversation, we will. If not, we'll help you until you're on your way. And some people have stuck with us for quite some time.
Enjoying the programming, and because you said about it before, like what you liked about Rehab, for instance, you could walk in there. It's all programmed. So, you know, if you're in a position where you're like, it's all a bit overwhelming, you know, you've got your body image or your restrictive eating or whatever it is that is your trigger, if someone can present you a somewhat personalised program remotely that you can do in your own time, they give you the encouragement and support. You're answering to someone. Everyone needs to answer to someone.
I think so. I think
it's okay answering to yourself, but you've got to be
only if you're honest with yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Well, mostly we aren't if we're in an unhealthy situation, aren't we?
And I think, look, we're trying to remove the view that you need to go to have a gym membership, essentially, because you don't. Remove the complexity of what people think either weight loss or muscle gain is, and remove the stigma behind talking about your feelings. We will just take every person as they come and go, what do you want? and then normally let us settle down. Okay, what do you really want? Right. And then we just, sometimes we program them a workout schedule to do. Sometimes we focus on, okay, you need to move more. You need to eat this ratio of food in this way, or learn about food. It's so customized.
Yeah, build them the confidence and like give them another choice on their mindset. It's their choice to adapt to it and to train themselves. It's sustainable strength. Like you talked about strongman, amateur strongman, not like the Eddie Hall kind of stuff. Tell us a bit about that.
So, I mean, when I was young, I was on a building site with my dad. So I was lifting bricks, digging and doing manual labour, and I was a decent sprinter at school. And I think those two things together gave me a fairly good base. And I just think when I started doing hybrid strongman with Strong Dad at the time, which is now Strength Dad, I realised I was pretty strong, pretty good at it.
That farm strength from doing it from a kid.
Yeah, exactly that. I just loved it. And it just gave me something. It made me proud of myself. It made me, I was getting stronger. I was getting leaner. That was good because it meant a lot to me at the time to be in good shape. And it was amazing. And then it went on to pushing the boundary on my max lifts and getting some extra coaching on my log work. And I did an amateur hybrid strongman competition at Farm Fitness. I won the competition, which was a shock to me. And in terms of what's next, I think I might do a proper strongman competition. Let's see. I mean, it has to fit. Let's see where it goes. I'm not going to be professional because I don't think I'd ever be comfortable enough with getting to 130 kilos, and I don't think I could manage it now. It's too late, but I might have a go at under 90 kilos and see what I can do, yeah.
You've found your fitness. You've gone through drug addiction, recovery. Your family are just seeing the benefits. Your community you've now forged a wicked relationship with somebody that you've created another business off.
Yes.
Your discipline to go and train keeps you away from other things that you could be doing. So it's such an important thing to give yourself if you're a slightly addictive person. A healthier addiction, healthier habits.
Yeah. Talk about like if it satisfies an addictive need, I'd rather it be that
healthy
than sitting on my phone.
Basically, you're training yourself to be adaptive to the things that are thrown in front of you.
Well, this is what the stoicism is, and this is why it all ties in. It's like, funny enough, I'm 2 days behind on my daily stoic.
Right on holiday.
Yes. And I'm 2 days behind. I'm thinking it's 3 days. I can't remember the caption. I think it was Seneca, but the first sentence was, "We're all addicted." And I just thought, I'm 2 days behind, but I'm going to see the Mick this morning to talk about this. And it's like, those little moments make me smile. I don't think there's anything spooky going on, but it's like, it makes me smile.
There's a connection to philosophy which was formed over 2,500 years ago.
It's bizarre, but it still applies now.
But they got the sense of fulfilled and happier life.
Because it always resonates. That's why it's so enjoyable to read those quotes and read those texts.
It's very accessible, isn't it? It's a page a day.
Well, exactly, but it's all there. It's like, it's very directly tied to a feeling or a thought that you've had, and it really applies, and it applies to everyone, but it's moving, mate. That's my little escapism in the morning. I'd come downstairs, I'd take my vitamins, I'll pull the book down from on top of the microwave, put my specs on, because I can't read the words properly in the morning when my eyes are misty, and I have 5 minutes standing in the kitchen and read it. That can turn my day.
Funny enough, I used to have it by my bedside, but I found that you need light. And I didn't want to upset my missus because I get up at a stupid time in the morning. So mine's in my kitchen. I've done my breathing technique.
Yeah.
So I've reset. I've become the alchemist. And then, I've had my hot lemon water. Everything's functioning. And my daily state is the first thing that I want to do. And it's just one page. And like you said, you read it and it just gives you something to go firmly on with the day. But it straight away, it gets your mind thinking.
The stuff that's written down there applies to life. And it's like...
That's where it becomes the modern. I think reading like the Daily Stoic or taking that little bit of you routine through gratitude, compassion, empathy with yourself, understanding your own suffering. But it really is. It's about watching how your very, very strong muscle of your brain moves around with all these different stimulants. So how do you settle that down and focus? And I find stoicism, breath work.
I think that's probably very important to just take a second, and whether you do it 5 minutes or 5 seconds, whatever, just actually recognise that you're a bit flustered.
I used to as well. It's quite funny how you can change your mindset, but I had a shoulder reconstructive surgery, and when I'd been a barber surfing and a few other overtraining, actually poor attitude towards stuff. Every time someone come into me, and I'm out of shape and, I'd gotten inside this loop of negativity, I was never going to be able to provide for my family. That's where I opened up my own mental health. I've got to be honest. I was in the darkest place I've ever been.
Yeah.
Surgeries, fear, and shamed myself for doing it, and all of this. And it was my fault. But everyone would come in and go, well, how are you doing? Every 3 or 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever. And all I was doing was talking so negatively because everything felt negative.
It became it.
I was a premonition of my own words from weeks and days and hours and minutes ago. And I got into that loop and I slowly realised that, and then as I've trained and been able to become aware, like stress causes a lot of your injuries or your brain to link up with your body because it's so powerful. And even now, like I've got the hamstring issue. Yeah, I've got a little bit, I've irritated my hamstring, but it's because I'm under stress. And I've got to the point now where I'm like, when someone asks me, instead of it triggering me to go, oh yeah, no, everything's hurting so much, I'm like, that's a good reminder. Posture. I've now reframed it. Instead of going negatively, I'm like, thanks for the reminder. I'm working towards it.
And that is what CBT is. Cognitive behavioural therapy.
I've never even had it, but I'm just doing it.
But you're doing it. No, but some people naturally do it. That's the point. And it felt very natural to me when I was engaging in that like heavily.
Yeah.
Like, And the negativity, I've been in situations with people that we are spurring each other on in a negative spin, and that is not helpful. And you can go away feeling very stressed. Mental stress will ultimately leave you physically tired, I think. And if I have a hard day of thinking, which is stressful, I am blasted. Like I was in the rehab, all that change, all that stimulus, all that stress going on. When I came out, mate, I would go up to the top room. I was back at work, go up to the top room, and I would literally meditate for half an hour. Couldn't keep my eyes open, sleep for an hour and a half, come down, have dinner, go back to bed. So that was the healing process, in my opinion. It's like I needed to sleep. I mean, I probably missed.
I was going to say,
missed about a year of sleep at some point,
and some,
yeah,
and some. Like moving forward, can you just mention how people can get in? I know you're off social media, but you're going to be back on.
Well, Sustainable Strength social media is live, right?
Yep.
So you've got at sustainable_strength_ at the end. And Brett as well, you can pick up Brett at the Brett Sizeland. He's on Instagram. And our website is sustainablestrength.co.uk. And that's got all the information on there as well.
So anyone who's looking to train with what they've got, improve how to go about everything and give themselves something to try, like it sounds like a great, accessible...
It's for everyone in a similar scenario to me and Brett.
Yeah, so I mean, I recommend it. I recommend trying everything. I like CrossFit, but... I've liked other things as well, and you go through a different path, and sometimes it's just you need something a bit new and a bit different. And I think training outside, you do a lot of stuff outside, don't you?
Well, we do a lot of stuff outside. So obviously, Strength and is Brett's other business with his business partner Scott. Those guys, I've got 3 essentially outside gyms, one in Harlow, one in Hertford, one in Stevenage, and they are basically doing the hybrid strongman thing regularly. Search them up on Instagram. This is Strength and I think that is a great door to walk through, even before you go to Sustainable Strength and get some extra help. I mean, lots of our people start there and come in to work with me and Brett.
Yeah, it's like the nursery towards.
Well, I mean, you get people get to a certain point with just going and training, and then they want to look at their nutrition, they want to look at their sleep,
exactly.
They want to look at their. But like I say, that's a great sort of thing to have in the background. But ultimately, what we try and do is encourage people to just do something they can stick at for the long haul, because as you'll know, if you can just stick to something decent for a period of time, you're going to get a decent response, your body and your mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You've just got, there's loads of options. There's one of them. Exactly. It's just get into something. Always ask a curveball question.
Go on.
Sex, drugs and rock and roll. Pick a subject.
Drugs. I think drugs have got their uses. There's medical uses for drugs. But generally, like my experience with them has been pretty poor. It's important to understand that if anyone is going to do that, there's huge risks involved, not just on a behavioural level, but on a brain rewiring level. Yeah, I think that's what I'd get anyone to take home, is that sometimes you're doing damage that certainly adolescents and young people in the early 20s, when their brain's still developing, you can't necessarily undo that stuff. That would be my message to anyone that's thinking of or already engaging in that behaviour.
Yeah, it's not too late to say no.
No, I mean, say no is easy enough to say that, but some people are suffering. It's like, okay, it's not the only way. It is a way to get some relief, but it's not the only way. And there's others out there that are doing it as well. And they're doing recovery, and there's other people out there sitting in a room and they can't get away from what they're doing. So it's like, just realise that whoever that person is listening, it's like you're not on your own. And there's always going to be someone, usually worse off as well, somewhere.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the realisation that it can go worse.
Yeah.
And you think it's bad enough already. Thanks for that. Generally, thanks for coming in and sharing.
I've really enjoyed it, mate.
Just to sort of wrap it up, one last question.
Go on.
What was it that made you want to come on here?
You. I spoke to you, and I just trusted you, mate. That's it. I can get a good feel for people. And also the fact that I want to start pushing myself outside of what is most comfortable for me, which is not to be recorded. Yeah.
You know, I wanted to ask that question because I think anyone can judge where someone's at, but you've come in and you've brought a story about making the choice to go to rehab, and it's not as common a conversation in our country, and there's a lot of people that are in that same situation, same but different. And I think
it's all behind
so
closed
important.
doors. It's all behind closed doors. It's all in the AA, in the CA rooms, and they've got their coping strategies, and it's in those really good environments that are filled with fantastic people who give a lot. But it's like, yeah, I'm glad that I've had the chance to do this, mate, and I appreciate it.
I think it's like you said before, it's overcoming those little fears and pushing yourself, those little micro doses of self-improvement.
Yeah. Who knows what's next?
Yeah, exactly. It's part of the therapy, and it's like, right, yeah, I've done that. I've put myself out there, and actually, I will have helped some people.
Yeah, and I think generally, mate, the message needs to be shared, and me overcoming a little bit of fear today in order to do that is a pretty good trade-off for me.
Thank you so much for coming on. Peace, love, power to your day, bro.
You too, bro. Thank you, mate. Love it.
The Pod Barber is a That Media and Design production, with Mickey at the mic and Howie at the controls. If you've been affected by any of the topics in this show, you can find more helpful information on the episode's page at thepodbarber.com and search The Pod Barber on social, and let's get connected.